Hello and welcome to the 207th edition of the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. In Nashville, Tennessee, I'm the professor, Matt Perkins. And a soggy bubble screen across the Harpeth River from me here in the Music City. It's our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton.
Dude, I love the adjectives, man. I'm always excited when you introduce me to see what adjective attached to to any one of my favorite plays you use. So, and I'm sure our listeners and hopefully soon be viewers, that's just wishful thinking. Maybe we get a webcast. Will appreciate the use of the English language here. So, with that being said, it's a great week. It is officially clean old-fashioned hate week here in Dogland. So let's get it rolling, guys.
Well, we can't get it rolling without the third amigo in the second city, a man whose favorite Thanksgiving dish is mashed Cornhusker. It's our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting, Josh Cook.
That was seamless. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Weird travel situation for a lot of people, so if we have any listeners listening during travels, hopefully they get to where they're going just fine. I believe all of us are staying local, so.
Yes, we are. Thank goodness. Coach and I will be celebrating Thanksgiving a day early here at the professor's house, Shea Professor.
There we go.
So,
Shea Professor.
So we have a couple big ticket items to get to before we get into this weekend's slate of games. So why don't we start, Josh, with a little bit of an update on what our division standings are looking like heading into the final weekend of the regular season?
Definitely, yeah. We did this a couple weeks ago. Not a whole lot has changed. Over the American, Cincinnati has officially clinched it. They are 2 clear of UCF, 7-0 in conference. But the West is interesting. So Memphis and Navy are both 6-1. And the Middies have the disadvantage of losing to Memphis. But if they beat Houston, they can still win the division because Memphis has to play Cincinnati, who is, as established, really good. But this leads to a question that I had for you guys. If you're Cincinnati, do you want to win the game to go undefeated and stand a good chance to be the group of 5 representative? Or are you worried about tipping your hand to Memphis? Or are you even playing the long game and saying, well, Navy's probably not as good as Memphis. If we win this game and then assume Navy wins against Houston, we get them. Like, there's some weird scenarios. What are you doing if you're Luke Fickell?
I'm just trying to win the game that's right in front of my face. You can't prepare for those you can't try to imagine those what if scenarios because the second one is contingent on you winning the first game.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring it up is you guys may recall last year in the Mountain West, there was a very similar situation where Fresno played Boise in the final game of the season and basically didn't try. And then a week later in the conference title game, worked their butt off and won the game. So that's why I brought it up. For SMU fans out there who say, hey, what about us? We're 5-2. Unfortunately, both of their losses are Navy and Memphis in conference, so no chance there. Moving on to the ACC, this one is a pretty easy way to break down. Clemson wrapped it up weeks ago, and the Coastal Division is just the Commonwealth Cup. Whoever wins between Virginia and Virginia Tech this weekend in rivalry week will win the division. Big 12 is also locked down. Oklahoma and Baylor will have their rematch in the Big 12 title game. The Big 10 is also pretty easy to break down. Ohio State has clinched. Minnesota and Wisconsin, their rivalry game, which we'll be talking about obviously shortly, will decide the West. Conference USA is, as always, a delightful cluster of some teams. So to break this down, you got Florida Atlantic in the East, currently 6-1. That's ahead of Marshall and Western Kentucky, who are both 5-2. But what's complicating is Florida Atlantic beat Western, but lost to Marshall. Marshall obviously beat Florida Atlantic, but also beat Western Kentucky. So Marshall is in good shape if Florida Atlantic loses their final game of the season. Western Kentucky, by losing to both of them, is pretty much out of it. But yeah, some bizarre stuff in Conference USA to figure out. The West is equally confusing. UAB, Louisiana Tech, and Southern Miss are all 5-2. UAB has beaten Louisiana Tech, so they've got that advantage, but they lost to Southern Miss. Louisiana Tech, as mentioned, lost to UAB, but they did beat Southern Miss. So Southern Miss kind of out of it based on the tiebreakers, but an interesting weekend to say the least for Conference USA. The MAC, Miami of Ohio, they clinched in the East. The West is pretty easy. Western Michigan lost in MACtion already, so they wrapped up their slate at 5-3. Central Michigan did not play a MACtion game this week, so Central Michigan is in action this weekend. They are 5-2. If Central Michigan wins, they win the West. If they lose, they will also be 5-3, and Western Michigan has the head-to-head tiebreaker there. So that one is a little goofy because of MACtion, but fairly clear. Moving over to the Mountain West, you have Boise State clear. They are up over Air Force. BYU is 7, or Boise State, is 7-0. Air Force is 6-1, except Boise has the head-to-head tiebreaker. So it doesn't matter what Boise does in their final game of the season. The West is also wrapped up. Hawaii, a little bit of a surprise. They won the division 5-3 over San Diego State, who also went 5-3. Hawaii got the head-to-head tiebreaker just last week. So well done for Rolovich's Rainbow Warriors. San Diego State does have a game left. However, it is independent BYU, so that won't impact the Mountain West race in any way. Pac-12 North, that has been settled what feels like for weeks, with Oregon running away with it. Oregon State is sitting at second place at 4-4, but I think it goes to show the Pac-12 North's a little bit of a rough season, that Oregon State's 4-4, second place in the division, but 5-6 overall. The South is obviously just between Utah and USC. Utah lost to the men of Troy, but they have just Colorado left, and Colorado's kind of up and down. The game is in Salt Lake City, so you would assume that Utah hangs on and wins their division. The men of Troy are done with the year. They don't have a game this week. SEC, that's all wrapped up. Georgia and LSU will be meeting up, and then that leaves the Fun Belt. Appalachian State's wrapped up their division. The West is between the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns at 6-1 and the Arkansas State Red Wolves at 5-2. But Louisiana has the tiebreaker over Arkansas, so I think that one's just a formality, in that I don't see any way for Arkansas State to win. So that's it. We've done the divisions. Everything's all set. Eyes on the Big Ten, eyes on the American, eyes on the ACC to suss a few things out, and then obviously Conference USA, throw a dart at a dartboard and you'll figure out who's going to be in that title.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how Conference USA shakes out. But what I am even more curious about is how the FCS playoffs are going to shake out, because the bracket was just released this week, and we've got some potential good ones coming up. We're going to run through the bracket really quick. Obviously, FCS, they incorporate 24 teams into their playoff. So, proves that it can be done, but you have to start the playoff now in order to get it done by a reasonable time around New Year's. Number one seed this year, as it is seemingly for the last decade, North Dakota State. They are going to face off next weekend against the winner of the Nickel State versus North Dakota matchup. That could be an interesting in-state rivalry game if it gets played in the FCS playoffs the coming weekend. The other side of that side of the bracket is Central Arkansas as the 8th seed. They will get to play the winner of the Southeast Missouri State versus Illinois State. Elsewhere, Montana State is the 5 seed. They will get to face off against the winner of an interesting East Coast matchup between Albany and Central Connecticut State, which is 2 schools that are not typically making it here into the FCS playoffs. Elsewhere, we have elsewhere in the bracket we have Austin P right here in Middle Tennessee.
The Governors
are hosting Furman for the right to
the Paladins
for the Let's go P for the right to travel to Sacramento, California next week.
Let's go P. It's quite a travel plan.
Absolutely,
right there.
Yeah. The Governors.
Yeah, Mark Hudspeth doing a great job up
the
there.
The Governors have had a real nice showing this year. They're currently ranked number 17 in the country. Good for him. He playing tailback.
Matt, that's where our guy Leland Wilhoit is.
Okay,
that's where he ended up.
What kind
I think so. Last I saw, he was like a slot receiver, tailback. But they were thinking about.
We'll keep an eye out for Leland. Anyway, back to the FCS bracket. The number 2 seed, who have been the second best team in the country for a while now, James Madison. They will get to play the winner of Holy Cross and Monmouth, which serves for another really interesting first round matchup. The only reason that some of these teams are in, obviously, is because of their winning their conference, and that is the case for Holy Cross in the Pat League. They have the worst record of anyone in the tournament this year. They are 7-5, and they are, and they've never won a game in the tournament themselves. So I'm expecting the Crusaders to get blowed out by a 10-2 Monmouth squad that just absolutely ran the Big South this year. We've also got South Dakota State on that side of the bracket, who have become a perennial power. They will get to play the winner of UNI San Diego. And Josh, Northern Iowa, pretty shocking that they are not seeded. They are ranked 6th in the FCS right now, but because of the fact that they play in North Dakota State's division, so they're not going to get the auto berth. They are not seeded, so they potentially have a big second round matchup with the Jackrabbits.
I think a lot of that has to do with their lack of performance against teams in the playoffs. So they had their triple overtime heartbreaking loss at Iowa State. So that was one of their 4 losses. But their other 3 losses, 12 points at Weber State. Weber's in the playoffs. At North Dakota State, they got boat raced 46-14. And then at South Dakota State, they lost 38-7. So they had a nice season. They made the tournament like they were supposed to. But, it's tough to see based on that lack of success against playoff performing teams, UNI making much of a run. But, hey, you never know. Weird things have happened, so we'll see.
All right. Elsewhere in the bracket, we've got our final quadrant, the number 6 seeded Montana Grizzlies. They will get to play the winner of Southeastern Louisiana and Villanova. That Southeastern Louisiana squad has put up a fight against some big powers this year. They're only ranked 24th, but don't be surprised if they are able to push Montana there in the second round. Finally, Weber State will get to play the Wofford. We'll get to play the winner of Wofford versus Kennesaw State. Coach, I'd say two very traditional Old South colleges right there, facing off in the first round of the FCS.
Yes, and two variations of the same offense as well for Wofford and Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State has probably had the most upward trajectory. They're probably, I would say, they're like the most rapidly growing program, probably one of, if not one of them, in all of FCS. And so Brian Bohan has done a tremendous job down there, and I think they have a chance. And Wofford is a very pesky team, so this will be a fun one to watch because both teams are going to be tough outs. But you better turn it in. You better turn it on time because both these teams like to run the ball and it'll be over quick. So, both extremely formidable teams, great programs, stable programs, and I would expect a lot out of each one of these, and they could contend with anybody in FCS personally.
All right. Well, I'm excited about FCS, guys. I'm sure that you guys are as well, but it is Thanksgiving weekend, so we need to get into the real meat of this.
Whoa. Can we make our picks?
Okay.
I'll just skip right ahead to the Final Four. I got North Dakota State winning their region. Got James Madison in their region. I got Weber State winning their division. This Montana State team, though, really hot. I like them. They're my little bit of an upset. So I've got chalk other than Montana State. Okay. Between North Dakota State and Montana State, I am going to go with, unfortunately, the powerhouse, North Dakota State. James Madison, Weber State. I'm going to go with James Madison. Get the game we all want, the Dukes and the Bison.
Bison.
And two first-year coaches, so you can't really say, oh, well, one's got a coaching advantage, one doesn't. I'm going to go with chalk. I'm going to take North Dakota State until they lose, until the dynasty is...
Did you say rock chalk?
Yep. Until they lose, until the dynasty's totally done. I don't know why you wouldn't pick the Bison.
Rock chalk Bison Hawk.
What's your Final Four, you guys?
I mean, obviously, you have to go with North Dakota State. You have to go with the machine at this point. It doesn't matter who's running it. They're such a powerhouse that I'm going to pick them. I'm going to pick them to win it all until proven otherwise. So I'll start with that right away. I actually like the Jackrabbits to come out of South Dakota State, to come out of their quadrant. I think they're going to upset James Madison this year. South Dakota State is building a program in the mold of North Dakota State, and I think that they are almost at that point that North Dakota State was maybe about 10, 12 years ago, where they are really ascending and just becoming, year in and year out, that they are going to be a contender. And I think that this is, even though they've lost a couple of games this year, I still think that this squad is good enough that they are going to upset the Dukes and move on to the Final Four. I'm with Josh. I'm absolutely going to take Weber State in sort of, I don't know if you can put it in the bottom right quadrant of the bracket, the way it's printed, and then finally, I'm going to take a long shot. I'm going to be a homer and go with the Governors of Austin Peay.
The Governors
to come out as an unseeded, the only unseeded to make the Final Four. So that gives me North Dakota State versus Austin Peay in one national semifinal, South Dakota State versus Weber State in the other national semifinal. I've got North Dakota State, obviously, like I said, as the champion, and they will beat the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State in the title game.
Like it.
Coach.
All right. So if I am looking at this bracket correctly, I'm gonna have the Bison making it out of their region. I think that they probably got the easiest draw. I think Central Arkansas as a quarterfinal team tells you what you need to know. Nicholls State will be pesky, but I think North Dakota State will eventually just run roughshod through this side of the bracket. I think James Madison got unlucky with South Dakota State being in their same region. I think that'll be a tough win, but I do think James Madison will survive and win out of that bracket, but it won't be easy for them. Here's where we get all the fun. Okay. You have Montana State and Sacramento State as your automatic buys in that region. I think Austin P got very, very fortunate. Matt, you stole my thunder a little bit. They got very fortunate in the draw that they got. I think if they can get it rolling against Furman, I think they can make a run to the national semifinal, and I think that they will. So I'm taking the Govs because not only do I want the Govs to win, I think that they will. I think that they could be. They're hot right now at the right time. They're playing with a lot of confidence. Mark Hudspeth's done a tremendous job there, and I think that they can. I think they can upset their way up to the semifinal and earn a date with. I believe they're playing the Bison, right? If they go. Then the other bracket. Here's where it gets fun as well. Weber State, the odds-on favorite to come out of that bracket as a 3 seed. I think they're going to get a tough second-round matchup between the winner of Wofford and Kennesaw State. I think that's going to be your biggest upset of the bracket.
Ooh, I like it.
Right there. I think Kennesaw State is going to make it against they're going to play against Montana, but unfortunately, I think Kennesaw State is going to have to travel up to the Grizz, and we all know what the weather's like.
Well, I mean, that's going to be right after they travel
Montana
out to Utah to play Weber State too. So, that's going to be for whatever squad. If that does indeed happen, that's going to be a lot of traveling.
It's going to be a lot of traveling
and a lot of snow.
I think they can travel once. And upset, but I don't think they can do it twice. I don't think they can play in the extreme cold twice. And with a lot of snow on the ground. So I think the Grizz are going to come out of that region. And I think the Grizz's dreams are going to end in the semifinal. I think James Madison, I'm looking at chalk here for the championship game, the Bison versus James Madison. And I think the overall number one seed is going to prevail. I like the Bison to ultimately win the national championship. The Bison are going to have a tough game over Austin P. That's going to prime them for their battle with James Madison.
All right.
So there's my
picks.
I
like to hear it.
So we all picked North
Dakota State, which is
the Bison.
I mean, until they prove otherwise.
There's no reason to not pick them. I mean, it might be fun to pick a cute other story, but I mean, like, seriously, like they're.
I mean, I picked the biggest upset with Kennesaw State over Weber, and then I have Cinderella and Austin P. But Cinderella's going to get squashed in the semifinal.
I mean, they are. I think the closest analogy I can think of is this is the 1960s, 1970s UCLA basketball team.
Yes.
They had built their own pyramid of success. And they are reaping the rewards now. So, they've had multiple coaches. It's not a John Wooden situation exactly, but I think that's the closest sort of analogy that we have for the kind of dominance that they've had over the past decade. Anyhow, let's get to the matchups for this coming weekend. One game on Thanksgiving Day itself, the Egg Bowl. Coach, you have any quick thoughts on the Egg Bowl before we get into the bigger matchups of the weekend?
I think it's going to be a battle of futility. Where is the Egg Bowl this year? Is it
it's in Stark Vegas.
It's in the state of Mississippi, that's for sure.
That is for sure. It's in Stark Vegas. I think Mississippi State's going to win big. I think it's Matt Luke's last game.
So the other reason I wanted to talk about it really quick is one of the rumors that I was reading was that it also might be Joe Moorhead's last game at Mississippi State, because
Are they going to punish him to go to and make him go to Arkansas?
No, they're going to punish him way worse. Rutgers.
They're going to
Rutgers.
Huh? Why?
I don't wish that.
Apparently, Joe Moore. What from what I was reading is that Joe Moorhead is not feeling like he is fitting in culturally in Stark Vegas.
Well, he doesn't know enough about livestock.
I have heard,
and he's from the Northeast, and apparently there have been overtures from Rutgers to drop a pretty penny to get Joe Moorhead, and if they were able to do that, that would be more than a home run. That would be a grand slam hire.
Yeah, I have.
Does Rutgers own a pretty penny?
I have heard rumors that Joe Moorhead is literate, so that makes sense.
It only makes sense. Okay, well then let's head to the Friday games. Josh, I want to start with Farmageddon or whatever you guys are calling it these days. Iowa, Nebraska,
the heroes.
Yeah, the America. They should call it the America Love It or Leave It game. Is that where it stands?
The rivalry.
Is that the after the?
It should be called the Brian Ferentz to UNLV showcase.
Yes, please.
So anyhow, Josh.
No, he said that after the Orange Bowl.
Oh, okay. Either way, Josh.
It's the rivalry neither fan base cares about or wants, which is why this is the last year it's on Black Friday.
Okay, then I think you said enough. Unless there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, I think, I mentioned this a few weeks ago that Iowa, we know what they're going to do. They're going to struggle to score 20 points. They just scored 19 last week. They haven't scored more than 26 against any Power 5 team other than Rutgers. Their offense is a mess. It's terrible. So what's going to come down to is Nebraska won a week ago. Nebraska's sitting there at 5-6. If Nebraska is fired up and they want to make a bowl game, and they don't feel the pressure of needing to win the game to make a bowl game, and they're amped up, they're going to run us out of the building because we can't score a single point. If Nebraska is a little sloppy like Illinois was with the ball, they have some weird coaching decisions like Minnesota did, the defense can hang in there and spoil things a little bit. But, it's – Iowa is an open book. We know what they are.
Yeah, we definitely do. Okay, well, then let's move on down the calendar. Josh, you previewed Cincinnati, Memphis a little bit earlier. Is there anything you want to add to what you had said?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm with you, Matt. I think Luke Fickell wants to win this game. I think he knows that going undefeated in conference is pretty special. I think going 11-1 is really special. I think it would almost guarantee them getting past Boise State. I think, unfortunately, the Mountain West was a little bit down this year, so Boise State's not going to get a very good game for their title game against Hawaii. So I think Luke Fickell wants to win this and play in the gamesmanship that Fresno State did last year, or projecting ahead that, if we beat them, then we'll get Navy or whatever. Like, just go out and win the damn game. And I think that's what Cincinnati's going to play for. The one question I have is Cincinnati's last few games, the starts have been ugly. They've been asleep at the wheel, and it takes them a while to get going. And that could bode well for Memphis. They are still a really good offensive team, even though
they're explosive.
Yeah, even though
they can score in bunches. They can. They can get off to a hot start. Take a look at the SMU film. Cincinnati. Cincinnati, I think, as rough as the starts that Josh, you say they get off to, I would guess Luke Fickell doesn't want to hold anything back, because I think for a championship game purpose, he wants to get his team feeling good at the start of the game. And I think he's going to try to win this game just so he can build that confidence and momentum. And then he's going to let the chips fall where they may, because if they're a good enough team, they're going to win anyway. So they just got to play hard and learn how to start better. And I think this would be a perfect opportunity against a team like Memphis, who has a great ability to start fast.
Yeah, and I think that Memphis, this is going to be another big marquee showcase for them. They are the national game on Black Friday in the afternoon on ABC. It's in the Liberty Bowl. We saw what happened when game day came to Memphis against SMU. They showed up, they showed out, and they won. And I think that this is just another instance where I like Memphis a lot in this scenario. I know Cincinnati has been really good, but I think, Josh, one of the things you asked earlier is if should Luke Fickell, keep anything in his holster for the conference title game. As far as I'm concerned, he's going to need to empty it. He's going to need to empty his clip in this game. That's a bad metaphor. He's going to have to use the entire. He's going to have to find like the plays that are like, in the way like appendices of his playbook in order to pull out this victory. One other game from Friday night that I want to talk about, well, I guess it's Friday afternoon, Apple Cup. Even though neither team is ranked, this is an intriguing matchup because we could see 100 points here, Coach.
Yeah, we could. I think that both teams are I know they're extremely disappointed as to the way their seasons trickled out. I say trickled because it's just like, how can you let Oregon State be better than you in the division? So, good job on the Beavers part, though. I'll give them credit for sure. But Jacob Eason, when he transferred, he thought maybe, okay, well, when I take the reins, we're gonna just run away with this division. We got a great defense. This is probably set up the best for me. And it just hasn't come to fruition. They were upset a week ago by Mel Tucker's Colorado Buffs, and there's the Colorado reference, the relevant one I'm looking for. But yeah, this game is going to be interesting because the weather's usually bad, and there's usually weird stuff that happens in this game, and it just seems that Washington always has their number with Wazoo. So, I mean, expect the unexpected, expect quirky stuff, expect Mike Leach to take a bunch of chances.
Yeah. Josh, Coach used the word disappoint. And I was, one thing I was going to ask you guys today, or probably next week, but I think that Washington is one of the most disappointing teams in the entire country this year. Texas, I think, is on that list as well. Is there anyone else that sticks out to you in that way, Josh? Miami, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, Miami had a first-year coach. But, yeah, I think it has to be.
Miami losing to FIU is
$4 million just to pay him then another, whatever it is, $30 million? Like,
no, it
to lose to FIU?
Yeah, that didn't make any sense.
I mean, if they want somebody to lose to FIU, they just pay me like half the money, and I'll come down and lose to FIU.
Yeah, I think Washington has to be the biggest disappointment. They – with Texas, they're still middle of the pack in a really stacked conference. But for Washington, they're finishing around the bottom of a terrible division. Like, they're 6-5. That's really, really bad. They were non-competitive in a lot of games, it felt like. And so, yeah, I mean, they have to feel pretty bad. What's interesting about this game, and it's less so for Washington. In fact, I don't think there's any possibility of this happening for Washington. A, Chris Peterson's won a boatload of games. B, he's at his dream job. It's why he was at Boise State for as long as he was, waiting for this job to open. But for the Pirate, he's gotten looks at other schools. Tennessee had a flirtation with him before settling, I believe, for Jeremy Pruitt.
And when they did flirt with him, at Tennessee, the AD got fired. Yeah. So take that for what it's worth.
Some other schools have, kind of danced the dance with him. And he's had a tremendous success there. I know he hasn't gotten over the hump like Mike Price did with a conference title or any Rose Bowl appearances, but he's been phenomenal compared to what they were their last few coaches. And with Washington always going to be bigger brother, with Oregon returning to national prominence, I'm wondering if the Pirate takes this as an opportunity to see what else is out there, because there is going to be some interest from some teams.
I for one would be sad to see him leave because I think he's I think both his personality and that program in general mesh well.
I don't. I think he's happy, and so I don't think he's going to leave Washington State unless Washington State gives him a reason to. Meaning
they fire him. Yeah.
So we're not going to renew your contract.
And I don't see them doing that because they're not going to do much better than him.
No,
I mean their program is at an all-time high, even though they've kind of had a disappointing run this year.
No, but he's also never gotten to try his system out at a program where he can get 1 million 5-star recruits. What if, just crazy domino effect. What if Gus Malzahn somehow gets the offer he can't refuse and goes to Arkansas, and then Auburn comes calling? I mean, that would certainly intrigue anyone with competitive spirit to be like, ooh, I'm going to be in the same conference, same division, and same state as Alabama.
Well, he does have a history with the SEC. What if now here's the domino. What if Florida State hires Mark Stoops and Kentucky comes calling?
Ooh. Yeah, he was at Kentucky.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
For a second. Think about it.
I'm way more intrigued with Mike Leach at Kentucky than I am Mike Leach at Auburn. Oh. I'm way more intrigued. But
here's another fun domino.
Auburn and Mike Leach would not mesh at all, knowing that fan base.
No, that would last for half a second.
Here's another fun domino. There's a certain coach who's a total fraud who goes worse every year he's out of school. And Mike Leach used to coach in that exact same state. If you can't beat him, join him. How about if Texas snags the Pirates?
That was my thought exactly.
That won't happen.
That was my thought exactly. But
that won't happen.
Fan bases not meshing with the coach. Anyhow.
Yeah, they already thought he was weird enough at Texas Tech.
Let's head on, guys, to the big matchups of the weekend. We will start on Saturday with the big game, Ohio State, Michigan, up there in Ann Arbor. Josh, Ohio State, after last week's pretty dominant victory, save a couple of goofs in the third quarter over Penn State. Ohio State is rolling. They are now the number one team according to the CFP selection committee. We already talked about them on our last episode. We don't need to get back into that. Either way, they look fantastic. Any chance for Michigan to pull off what would be a pretty historic upset?
Well, according to ESPN, Jim Harbaugh has salvaged the season. So let's see how he's done that. Let's rewind. They beat Indiana a week ago, a team that hasn't beaten Michigan in 20 years.
20 years? Before that, 32 years. Since I think it's 87.
Oh, well, even longer. The week before that, they beat Michigan State, a team that is in desperate need of cleaning house. The week before that, they beat Maryland, a team that hired an idiot. The week before that, they beat Notre Dame. Okay, that's maybe a little impressive. We'll hang on to that one. The week before that, they lost to Penn State. The week before that, they had a weird game against Michigan in which it was never as big a blowout as the final score would indicate. A week before that, they barely beat hapless Iowa. So there's this love of making it sound like Michigan's had a major turnaround to their season. The turnaround was getting to play a bunch of crappy teams like Maryland, Michigan State, and Indiana has had a nice season, but they're not world beaters for a reason. So it's all, unicorns and fairy dust, and it's nothing special. The judgment day is coming, and Ohio State's going to drop them like third period French.
Wow. Why be disrespectful to third period French? I think it's going to be a massacre. I think Jim Harbaugh has 1 foot to the NFL. He's going to get one of these NFL jobs. Probably. Well, he's going to have his choice. They're all going to be fighting over him, justified or not. He might fit in better in the NFL. So I think it's going to be kind of Michigan's going to get off the hook because they don't have to fire him. They can say, "Oh, we lost our coach to the NFL," when in reality they probably wanted to sit there and fire him. But I think it's going to be Justin Fields is going to have a huge day.
Hey, you want to hear?
Dobbins,
You want to hear a crazy conspiracy domino theory?
Sure, hit it.
Maryland regrets what they did. They fire Mike Loxley. They hire Indianapolis Colt head coach Mark Wright, or whatever his name is. Frank Wright.
Frank Wright.
A Maryland alum. They wanted him before. The Colts bring back the prodigal son, Jim Harbaugh. Michigan always makes the wrong coaching decision. They bring back Big Ten coordinator and my favorite whipping boy, Tom Herman. Texas then hires Mike Leach. I did it again.
No, I was hoping that what I was hoping was that on top of that, D'Antonio falls and Mike Leach goes to Michigan State.
No, here you go. Here you go. Okay. I don't know where the hell to rewind that. Let's go. Okay. So Herman just went to Michigan. Okay. Well, I'll pick it up there. Okay. Herman goes to Michigan. Texas reunites with Mac Brown, and UNC hires Mike Leach.
No, I'm going to rewind it from there. UNC hires Brian Ferentz. Iowa that hires as our offensive coordinator Mike Leach to be coach in waiting.
He's like the exact same age as Kirk Ferentz. I think that Mike Leach and Kirk Ferentz. Hold on, I'm gonna vamp here for just a second because Kirk Ferentz is a Kirk Ferentz was born in 1955. Mike Leach was born in they're 6 years apart, 1961.
Okay, hey, here's an even bigger twist. Okay, Brian Ferentz gets hired at North Carolina. He hires James Coley as his offensive coordinator. And Georgia hires Lincoln Riley as their offensive coordinator.
Now we're just in fantasy world.
They really Mike Bobo's getting fired Saturday. He's done at Colorado State. So I think Georgia would love it if someone were interested in James Coley and hired him away so Kirby can bring back his buddy. I think Mike Bobo is the only person that could snap back at Kirby and not be fired on the spot. And I think Kirby would love if his health would allow it for Mike Bobo to be the offensive coordinator at Georgia.
Oh, boy.
That's a scenario that's been tossed around. But I think at the very least he would hire him as an analyst for a year or two and let him get his health back up underneath him, and then he would bring him up kind of he'd be kind of the in the wings coordinator and help Coley call plays.
Interesting.
So a lot of scenarios. I think Mike Leach is he's going to end up at Texas, I guess, is our conclusion, right?
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like he's going to Texas. So.
Yep, you can pencil that in. A very similar conclusion has been made about the Washington Redskins head coach.
Bill Callahan. So they go from Texas would stay weird, except they would go from their head coach kissing all of their players
and headbutting them with their helmets on.
Yes, that too. And they would go from that to Mike Leach is just quirky press conferences. Like, can you imagine the Texas fan base listening to a Mike Leach press conference and going, "What the hell? Why did we hire this guy?"
Can you imagine? Yes, I can, and it would be hilarious.
It would be hilarious. And then it'd be scary for the Big 12 all at the same time because I don't think they realize what they would have in Mike Leach because he's such an odd personality, unique personality.
Yeah, and then all the kids he was
would.
losing out on at Texas Tech, he would be getting at Texas, and it would be it would be a lot of fun. Red River shootout would, the over under on that one would be about 120.
Can you imagine Sam Ellinger under Mike Leach?
It would be fantastic. That would be the best quarterback talent he's ever had. Like,
I think Joe Tessitore just perked up.
Oh, Joe Tess. All right, we need to reel it back in and keep moving on with the weekend.
But do we?
We do, unfortunately.
Well, we should. We just made a bunch of punchlines about vacancies. We should say that there are some official ones. Rutgers has been in the books for a while. Florida State's been in the books for a while. But Bob Davie down at New Mexico retiring, and Mark Sanchez at UNLV not coming back. It sounded like his contract expired. They declined to extend it. So kind of a –
Did he butt fumble his way out?
Yeah, kind of – Tony Sanchez. Yeah, kind of a non-firing firing type situation
the classic
there. So
mutually agreed to part ways.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think out of those two jobs, both in the same conference, I think UNLV is a little bit more attractive because he did get some funding for some upgrades in facilities and stuff. So
it is Las Vegas.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. I think
could him and his brother switch places? He goes back to Bishop Gorman and his brother.
Yeah, no, his brother is the HC at Bishop Gorman right there in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean,
they just switch spots. That'd be good. And they bring on Tate Martell as the quarterback.
I mean, that kid's going to transfer again.
Yeah, he is.
I mean, he spent more time in the transfer portal than anyone.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. I think
I don't think he's the same school.
I think UNLV could be an attractive place for a potential up and comer. I mean, there's certainly worse places to go.
Well, definitely if you enjoy if you enjoy the nightlife. Which might be one of the problems on the job. Well, this whole conversation started with Ohio State, Michigan. I want to move to the other big game in the Big Ten this weekend, the game to decide the West. The battle for Paul Bunyan's axe. The number 12 Badgers are at the number 8 Minnesota Golden Gophers. Still feels weird saying that. Marquee game, 2:30 in the afternoon, Central Time, 3:30 in the afternoon, East Coast time there on Saturday. Game day is going to be in town. In the Twin Cities, Josh, for that one. Yet still Wisconsin's favored. How do you see it shaking out?
Well, I think that if Wisconsin plays sloppy like they did at times against Purdue and drop the ball a couple times like they've done a few other games, that Minnesota has a golden gopher opportunity because Minnesota outside of the Iowa game hasn't beaten themselves in any way. They're a very fundamentally sound team. So if Cone is off, if JTT has his one minor bugaboo of his resume, which is a little bit of fumbleitis, it's a great opportunity for Minnesota. I think Minnesota also, it's weird to say that losing isn't the end of the world for them because they've already defied expectations. They are already ahead of their rebuild than we expected. And so they're kind of, in a way, playing with house money. They broke the streak last year beating Wisconsin. They were nationally ranked for most of the season. They have had a wonderful season by any measure. They're going to go to, by far, their best bowl game in 15 years. This season has been an immense success. And on the flip side, Wisconsin started with national title aspirations. To not even make the Big Ten title game would be, in the eyes of many Badger fans, a failure. And
yes,
so Wisconsin's going to play with so much more pressure. When you have that pressure, sometimes you don't play up to expectations. When you have everyone saying that you are a Heisman candidate, and even if you don't win, you need to be invited to New York City. They've been saying that he's the greatest of all time. He's on graphics with Husho Waka and Ron Dane and stuff. what has Wisconsin been reading all week? Like, I think this is a great opportunity for Minnesota. I do think Wisconsin's the better team, and if Wisconsin can compartmentalize and play up to their potential, they should win. But I would not be surprised in any way if, when we do our recap show next week, that we're talking about Minnesota in the Big Ten title game.
All right, I have 4 to 6 assorted thoughts that I'm going to get through. So, thought number 1. Last week, the Badgers played Purdue. Purdue torched the Badgers with trick plays. Purdue, when they were just using their base standard offense, they couldn't move the ball. But Purdue scored because they were able to use trick plays. PJ Fleck has more than a few tricks up his sleeve. We talked about, finding those plays that are in the way back in the appendices of your playbook. PJ Fleck's going to pull all of those out this week. Wisconsin's secondary, especially their safeties, need to stay much more disciplined. They got burned over the top by Purdue, and this is Purdue without Rondale Moore. Against those 2 receivers that Minnesota has, which it sounds so strange again to say this, but they're one of the best receiving tandems, wide receiver tandems in the entire country. And Wisconsin safeties cannot afford to get beat deep. So I'm especially looking at Reggie Pearson, who's a strong safety there. He is a great tackler, amazing in run support, but he has gotten burned deep multiple times. And he is the guy I am concerned about being picked on the back end. I expect Wisconsin to employ a lot of 3 safety. That they will play a lot of a weird sort of like 2-3-6 hybrid defense where they are playing 3 safeties and 3 corners. They're playing 2 outside corners, a slot corner, and 3 safeties. And they bring in Colin Wilder, who's a transfer from Houston, and I expect to see a ton of that this weekend, so they don't get burned deep. On the offensive line, the Badgers, obviously, it's what they're known for. We're going to have to see how Cole Van Lanen is. He missed last week's game against Purdue. In the 2018 season, Pro Football Focus rated him the #1 left tackle in all of college football. He has had an up and down season this year, but he is really needed if they are going to be able to consistently run the ball and hold on to the ball, which is what Josh mentioned. For my third point, Jonathan Taylor cannot fumble the ball. Jack Cohn has done a great job taking care of the ball all year. I don't expect that to change here. Jonathan Taylor, though, has had a little bit of fumbleitis. He needs another 200-plus yard game, not just to get himself to New York for the Heisman Trophy celebration, but also just because, he needs to, if he really wants to solidify his place amongst the all-time greats. He's been amazing, but these are the kind of games that he really needs to show up in. Finally, Paul Chryst. When the Badgers played Western Michigan in the Cotton Bowl a couple years ago, PJ Fleck's last game at Western Michigan, the Badgers dominated that game, and he needs to be 2 steps ahead of PJ Fleck and not get too stuck in his ways. I hope that the Badgers on offense are using a lot more of changing their shifting formations before pre-snap. They'll line up in one formation and then they'll switch to something completely different. It will make the defense basically tell them, what they're doing, if they're playing man, if they're playing zone, etc., and get the matchups that they want. I want to see a lot more of that. I hope to see a lot of 32 Hippo this weekend. Coach, well, I guess I'll give a quick prediction here. I actually think Minnesota's going to win the game.
I wanted to push back one thing on something you said, Matt. You mentioned the bowl game where Wisconsin beat Western Michigan. I remember that game quite well. Wisconsin raced out to a big lead in the first quarter. I believe it was 21-0. And Western just wasn't prepared for the size, speed, everything. Second, third, and fourth quarter, it was an even draw. Western matched Wisconsin score for score, moving the ball for moving the ball. physicality for physicality. And the end margin was the same what it was in the first quarter. Western Michigan was not this Minnesota team. This Gopher team's going to be ready. I don't see that dominating quarter happening again. I think this is going to be just an amazing game. I really do. Whether who wins or loses, as an Iowa fan, I'm leaning towards Wisconsin because that's where I did go to school. But I'm just excited for what on paper looks to be an incredible matchup of two very, very similar teams in terms of end results, but getting there in two very different ways.
Cooper agrees. I think, Matt, Josh, I think what Wisconsin needs to do, I think they need to simplify. I don't think they need to get into a duel with Minnesota. I think they need to force Minnesota to play Wisconsin football. And I say that a lot, but when you have two contrasting styles like that, I think that if Wisconsin can utilize a lot of shifts, motions, and their 32 hippo, I think that if they have any sort of success with that, which they did against Michigan, I'm not saying Michigan is better than Minnesota, but I think traditionally they are. And I don't think Minnesota as a program is equipped to deal with the ramifications of, is Jonathan Taylor running down our throats in this hippo formation? I don't know that if there's any success in the hippo formation, that Minnesota can handle it. So I think they need to go out and just play Wisconsin football. And on defense, they need to play the RPO very good. The safeties are the ones that need to have the best game because they can't get so aggressive in the run game that the seam route goes right by them on an RPO, or they can't sit back to where they're completing intermediate routes in front of them. They kind of have to find that balance, which is why RPOs are so successful. It kind of messes with you in that regard. So I think Wisconsin's going to have their hands full. That's a given. Minnesota is a very, very well coached. I don't want to say overly talented team. They've got some talent and they use it well. They don't have a lot of depth, and I think that's where Wisconsin, if they're going to win, I think that's where Wisconsin can get them. I think Wisconsin is a deeper team. They're built for games like this, and I think and with this series, right, Matt, they dominate the series, don't
they? The historical series is tied.
Yeah, in the last 20 and 30 years,
Wisconsin's dominated. Wisconsin had won.
Yeah, Wisconsin and Iowa
before last year.
So recently, it's been heavily tipped in Wisconsin's favor. Yeah. So, I mean, the psychology of that has got to play into it, right? So they start wearing them down, even though it's not going to reflect on the scoreboard. That whole psychology of, oh, here we go again. That's you got to think that might creep into their minds subconsciously. So there's a lot of factors involved in a rivalry game like this, and so I don't think you could definitively say, oh, Wisconsin, or you can't definitively say, oh, well, Minnesota, they're going to be in the Big Ten title game. It could go. That's what's exciting about this game and this matchup. It could literally go any way, and when there's something on the line, it makes it
Wisconsin's won 25 of the last 30 games. But historically, it's 60 to 8 in 8 for 8 ties.
Okay.
So,
but
recently it's been heavily favored Wisconsin. But all right, well then let's move over to the SEC, where the big game of the weekend is obviously the Iron Bowl. And even though it's not going to have SEC title implications because LSU has pretty much locked that one up. Alabama Auburn is a real test for Alabama this year, Coach, because they're going to be without Tua Tagovailoa.
Yes. Well, to say that game doesn't have oomph is not true because Bama's sitting there at number 5.
I said just for the SEC title game implications.
Oh, yeah, for playoff implications, this thing has huge oomph because if things go as everybody's predicting, which I don't think anybody's giving Georgia a shot in the SEC championship, that LSU is a foregone conclusion that they're going to win the game. I speak a little bit hyperbole there if you couldn't tell. That Alabama will get that fourth spot. And so Auburn can spoil that. So they've got a lot to play for. As far as getting an SEC title game now, it's a lock. But Mac Jones has got his hands full with that defensive front. I've said it. I said it the week of the Georgia-Auburn game. I've said it all season long. Marlon Davidson, Derek Brown are two of the best tackles I've ever seen on defense, and that's saying a lot. They are incredible. They are definitely. I would say those two. Well, maybe Derek Brown is better than what Quinnen Williams was. I think Marlon Davidson is not as good as Quinnen Williams, but he's pretty daggone good. So I think a backup quarterback has not seen a defense quite like Auburn. So it's going to be a huge culture shock. The crowd is going to be in a frenzy down there at Jordan-Hare. I think it's going to be a rough go for Alabama. They've got to lean heavily on Judy and Devontae Smith, and they've got to just get the ball out quick. They're not going to be able to. They're not going to have much success on the ground. I think that if they're going to have any success at all, they've got to continue to do it through the air. And Mac Jones has got to find a way to tap into his inner Tua, and just he's got to get the ball off. And if he gets the ball off, Georgia has shown that Auburn's secondary is susceptible to deep balls, especially over the middle. And so if they can get Judy and Devontae Smith going, then they can get a lot of momentum, and that defense can kind of do their thing. Which their defense is not as talented as it has been. It's not as productive as it has been. Really, it's probably just as talented because they recruit nothing but 5 stars, but it hasn't been as productive is probably the right word. And so I think Auburn has got to do a good job of getting the ball out of Bo Nix's hands quickly. I think they have to get some sort of run game going. Bo Nix is going to have to be involved in that. I think some of the stuff they did in the fourth quarter of the Georgia game, if they can kind of tap into that, I think they'll give the Crimson Tide all that they can handle. So for this to be a foregone conclusion that Alabama is going to win this game is also off the table because, A, it is a rivalry. It is the Iron Bowl. Anything can happen in the Iron Bowl, but I think Auburn's way better than a lot of people give them credit for, and a lot of it runs through their defensive line, which I think arguably, and we'll see in the draft results, but it's right up there with Clemson's defensive line from a year ago. So maybe not quite as deep because I think they had 2 first-rounders and like a third-rounder, but they're talented nonetheless. They might have 2 first-rounders on that defensive line. So I liked Auburn. This is going to be also a fun game to watch because they will give them all that they can handle. So they held LSU to 23 points, and we all know what LSU does on offense, how explosive they can be. So I'm still going to take the Tide because I think I still don't fully trust a freshman quarterback to carry this thing. So if you guys want to fire away, I'm going to take the Tide in a tight one.
Josh?
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the Tide as well. I'm just –
Oh, and I'm picking Wisconsin, too, by the way. Go ahead.
Yeah, just that receiving core, even with a backup quarterback, I feel like you just kind of get it in the right zip code and they're going to come down with it. So the Alabama defense, that's the one kind of X factor. Coach mentioned they haven't played up to that lofty Alabama standard. But they're also going against a freshman quarterback, and I know he started all the games this year, but this is his first Iron Bowl. This is a huge hurdle. And there have been plenty of quarterbacks with plenty of experience who find a way to stub toes in big rivalry games. So I think the smart money's on Alabama. Alabama also has more to play for, and I think Alabama's not going to attempt a 53-yard field goal with 1 second left in the game.
I doubt that will happen either.
Nice.
Coach, you referenced a little good old-fashioned hate earlier.
Yeah.
Let's, the Ramblin' Wreck of Georgia Tech, not quite so great on the field this year.
No, it's not at all. I think a few points from this game. I think what you've seen out of Georgia's offense, especially last week. They need to get back on track. This is a game where I think Jake Fromm, who has I don't know what the heck has happened to him. He's in a funk right now. He's 10 cup. He's got the yips. He is sitting worm burners down the line at the driving range. If you guys are with me, he's in a bad place mentally right now, and he just has no confidence, whether it's in himself, whether it was related to the weather conditions, whether he still doesn't quite trust his receivers. I don't know what it is, but his footwork has gone to a complete hogwash. He hasn't been able to hit the deep balls that he used to hit early in his career, or even at some points earlier this year, or even a week ago or 2 weeks ago against Auburn, where he hit one over the top to Dominic Blaylock. So I think it's important, for in the first half to just kind of get things going. I think they're going to have to throw a lot just to build Jake Fromm's confidence. I think this is a good week to do so. I think this is a good week for these receivers without Lawrence Cager to kind of build a rapport. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the offensive line, kind of getting some more experience and just kind of working to get healthy. That's the main thing. They're beat up. They had a tough gauntlet in November. Realistically, starting with the Florida game, you could say either way. But Florida, Missouri, Auburn, A&M, it's been a rough November as far as big games. And that's kind of the way you want to see it in college football. So I'm not complaining, just explaining. So I think there's going to have to be some get healthy work and some get in a rhythm, get some confidence type work offensively. I think defensively, that Texas A&M game up until like the fourth quarter where they got gassed because the offense could not stay on the field. I haven't seen a more dominant Georgia defense. It was incredible what they were able to do and how they were able to shut down everything that Texas A&M wanted to do. They even had a failed onside kick attempt, which I won't even talk about that because that was the poorest execution of the onside kick ever. You had it right there. All you had to do was literally be unathletic and fall over, and you weren't unathletic, and you kicked it around, and they recovered it. So, but the defense did a good job of forcing no points off of that possession. So the defense is, they just got to continue their rhythm, and they just got to get some more reps, and hopefully the offense can learn how to stay on the field, because that's going to be important and what's going to be a slugfest the next week in the Mercedes-Benz. So, clean old-fashioned hate. Georgia Tech is, the only reason they're even slightly a factor is because it is a rivalry. But I think this one should be, pretty easy for the Dogs, at least this year. So I just wanted to get a few things out there. I think it's important for Georgia's offense to get some confidence going before the SEC championship.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty much going to do it for us, Josh, unless we've missed anything else.
I just want to rapid fire a few games. Give me one-word answers for each of these, or in the case of a school that has 2 words in their name, 2-word answer. Virginia started out red hot, stubbed their toe late. Virginia Tech started out pretty slow, red hot right now. Both teams come in 8-3. Games in Charlottesville. Winner wins that ACC division. Virginia or Virginia Tech?
Hokies.
Coach?
The Who's.
All right, there we go. My adopted team, Eastern Michigan, they are 6-5. They host 5-6 Kent State. A win for sure. 7-5 gets them a lock to a bowl. Let's go, Screaming Mean Eagles. The burying the lead game. Missouri can't go to a bowl game, and well, neither can Arkansas. They're 2-9, but that game is in action. Another game I want you guys to pick on: Louisville, 7-4, Kentucky 6-5, 8-4 for first season. Scott Satterfield, does Louisville pull this one out?
Louisville. Kentucky doesn't have a quarterback.
Matt?
They have a wide receiver playing quarterback.
I think I'm with Coach on this one. I think Louisville's gonna pull it out as well.
All right, that's the Commonwealth Cup. No, wait, that's the Virginia game. The Kentucky game is the Grocery Bag Bowl. Illinois They host Northwestern, also a rivalry game. Illinois can go 7-5. Indiana and Purdue.
Is it at the grocery bag or the pizza
box? They're playing at the grocery bag.
There we go. Indiana, a very good season by their standards, knocking off their rival Purdue to get to 8-4 would be quite the feather in their cap. Speaking about a feather in the cap, Wake Forest, they're no longer ranked, but if they can beat a bad Syracuse team, a disappointing Syracuse team up at the Carrier Dome, there'd be 9 wins for them. The next game I wanted you guys to pick on doesn't impact the Mountain West race in any way, but 2 fun ball clubs, 2 teams having pretty good years. Wyoming 7-4, Air Force 9-2. Game is in Air Force. I think what Calhoun's done with this Falcon squad is awesome. I hope they get to 10 wins.
Yeah, give me the Falcons.
I'm going to contrary and take the Cowboys.
Not the Atlanta.
I'm taking the Cowboys.
All right. And then the last one I wanted you guys to pick on.
We should probably touch on Bedlam really quick.
I know. Well, I figured you'd want to. But the last one I wanted you guys to pick on that I found intriguing, the Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
Oregon has clinched the division. Oregon cannot make the playoffs. But Oregon State, if they win, they make a bowl game at 6-6. Do you see anything funky happening up there in Autzen Stadium?
I'll say this, Josh. I'll say this. If Oregon would have won last week, then yes, you could possibly see something funky because they're riding high. But Oregon's pissed.
I'm actually going the other way. I think I think they're going to have a hangover from that loss, and I think that Oregon State is going to win it on a last-second field goal.
Interesting.
Where's it's Autzen? Yeah,
I don't like that. If it was in Corvallis, maybe I'd say that, but no, I know Oregon's going to win the game, but I think it's going to be closer than people expect.
Sorry, I misread my notes. There was one last game I wanted you guys to pick on. ACC action. The disappointing NC State Wolfpack host North Carolina. State is 4-7. Tar Heels 5-6. Mac Brown, does he get them to a bowl game?
Without a doubt. NC State is so decimated that 4-7 is all smoke and mirrors. They have the talent level right now of about a 2-10 team.
Wow. All right. There we go. Let's talk about Bedlam then, Matt.
Bedlam, quickly.
You doing your annual pick?
Bedlam, folks.
I think every year on the show, I've picked Oklahoma State. Every year we've done the show, Oklahoma's won. No, I'm not picking against Oklahoma. I can't do it at this point. I'm sorry. Lincoln Riley has completely won me over. They're going to win. Oklahoma State is without Tylan Wallace is just not the same offense.
This is where you're wrong, Matt. Oklahoma has nothing to play for. They've already clinched the title game.
Yeah, they have a spot in the playoff to play for. I think they are going to be locked in. And I love my man Mike Gundy, but man, they're going to lose by 20 or more.
I think every year I have blindly picked Oklahoma in a blowout. Why would I mix that up now,
Coach?
I like Oklahoma in a 2-touchdown shootout where it's going to be like 56 to 40 something.
So a low scoring Big 12 game.
Sounds about right.
A defensive slugfest.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us here today on the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. We hope you all have a safe and wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. On behalf of our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton, here in the Music City, and our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting, Josh Cook, up there in the Windy City. This is the professor in Nashville saying so long and see you next time on the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast.
Eat too much turkey.
Another Houston player transferred.
Thanks for listening to the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. To get in touch with the show, email us at illegalmotionpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at illegal_motion and check out our Facebook page.